In this video, I'll show you how to make an ESP32-C5 attachment board for the Flipper Zero or the Kiisu. So the new ESP32-C5 development kit allows you to have 2.4 GHz and also 5G. So Just Call Me Coco has enabled it, so it works with Marauder. So you can use 5 GHz with Marauder now through the Flipper Zero or the Kiisu. So Just Call Me Coco, he also sells a Marauder C5 adapter for the Flipper Zero. So if you don't want to do a DIY, definitely check out his website and you can just buy direct from him. So his one has an SD card and GPS inbuilt. The board I'll show you that I'm going to build today is just a basic one. So it doesn't have an SD card and it doesn't have a GPS. But in the description, I'll include the pinouts for that if you want to try to work out how to add that yourself. So this will work for the Kiisu, but I guess if you're doing it for the Kiisu, you're just going to make sure when you're doing the layout of the board, you just got to keep in mind that the Kiisu has the GPIO pins mirrored to the Flipper Zero. So if it's going to match a Flipper Zero, it actually looks like that. So you just got to keep that in mind. So just before we get started on the video, I just want to say a quick thank you to the sponsor of this video, PCB Way. If you want to take your projects to the next level, they offer a number of different services from manufacturing PCB boards, CNC machining, 3D printing, sheet metal fabrication, and injection molding. If you need any of these services, I would highly recommend you check them out. I've used their services for some of my other projects, and I've been really happy with their quality and of the products and their customer service. And don't forget to check out their module store for tools and other cool parts. So we'll get back into the video. So the first thing that you'll need essentially is you'll need to get a ESP32-C5 development board, some GPIO pins, a prototype PCB board, and just silicone wire or any wire that you have that's small enough. So just move everything out of the way. Zoom in. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is you'll have to get a PCB board that fits the ESP32-C5 development board. So the one that I've found works perfectly is this one. So it's 30 times 70 millimeters. So essentially it needs 10 holes up, and then I think it's 24 across. So if you've got any PCB board that's larger than this, you can cut it to size. If you've got this exact same one, what you have to do is just essentially, what I've done is I've cut it on this side and I've cut on that side, just to get rid of excess. And then I've just used 60 grit wet and dry sandpaper. Just wet the sandpaper so you don't get all that PCB dust everywhere, and just sand it. So once you've sanded all the sides and the top, you should get something that looks like this. So from that, I've cut it and I've sanded it, so it just looks like that. So that's 10 holes up and that's 24 across. And then what you want to do is get the Flipper Zero or the Kiisu. The only thing with the Kiisu is if you're using, on my setup here, I've got the low profile female headers that I've soldered in. So it's a bit shorter. So if I put the board that I've already made in, you can see there's a gap. So before you do the soldering on the board, you want to make sure that the plastic is pushed down as far as possible, and then trim the top of the GPIO pin so it sits flush, and also the layout. So you don't want to make it the same as a Flipper Zero because it's mirrored, so it'll sort of sit off the Kiisu a bit. But yeah, you'll understand what I mean once you actually start making it. So when you do it, just mock it up so it looks right on the Kiisu, and then you can just follow the same wiring for the Flipper Zero board that I'll make. Also, if you're interested in getting a Kiisu, in the description I'll have a discount code as well if you want to buy one. So this is just one that I've put a case and soldered some female headers on. So it looks quite nice. We'll get back to the Flipper Zero. So what you need to do is get some GPIO pins. and the first one has 8. So just get 8 and then just snap it. So that's nice clean cut. And just keep in mind, if you're going to do it in the flipper zero like I'm doing, just be careful. Make sure you don't put too much heat on the pins and leave it in too long, or make sure you don't drop solder or accidentally use a soldering iron on the flipper zero. So just be cautious, or you can just do it off the flipper zero. And then next lot will be 10. So let's get 10 and then we just snap it. Put that in the flipper zero. So it looks like that. And the next thing we want to do is just lay out the board where it's going to sit. And I like to put it, I think this is what I did for the first one. Yep, so if you look at it, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll put on the 4th row and we'll solder that into place. So when I do the soldering, I just usually like to do the first one. So I'll put a bit of solder on the first one and just sort of like tuck it in place. And then you can use your hands to push it down flat. And then it should sit flat. So just make sure it's sitting flat, and then you can solder the next one. So I'll solder the end of that row. Just double check, make sure it's all looking good. And then I'll do the end on this side. And then you can just solder the rest in. So yeah, try not to keep the soldering iron on the pins too long. So you just want enough so it's heated it and the solder has melted nicely. But yeah, so if you're not that good at soldering, I'd probably recommend not doing it on the flipper zero like I'm doing, and just doing it using something like helping hands or something to help hold it. Or if you've got a row of female headers that you can put it into that will hold it in place, that will be also ideal. So that's all soldered into place. Then we can take that out off the flipper zero. So we'll just use the flipper zero as a little jig. Next thing you want to do is get where's my ESP? The board. You'll also notice that my board might look a little bit different because usually there's a little jumper here. I've just taken it out and I've put a jumper at the back just to make it look a little bit cleaner. So that jumper is, I think you take the jumper off and then you can connect something else up to it to measure the current that it's drawing from the ESP32. So it's just more of like to test how much current is running off it. You don't actually need it, but you definitely need to make sure that these two are connected to each other. And then we just want to put onto the board. And then you'll notice that the spacing should be 3 on the left side, and then there should be 5 on the right side. So before I started this video, I've already trimmed it. So what I've done next is you just go along and you can trim all of them that you don't need and make it flush. So I've just trimmed it and made it completely flush. And I've just left the ones that you need to, we're going to wire up. So the ones we need to wire up essentially is you've got a ground and you've got a 5 volt. And then on this side here, you've got the TX and then you've got the RX. So if I look at the board like this, you'll see I've left those pins long, and then I'll trim it once we put the wiring in. And I don't know if you can see it, but you can see here, what I've done is I've just used a little bit of a little small grinder, and I've grinded these on this side So when we do put the wiring down, it's not going to interfere with the plastic header, and it'll sit flush with the PCB board. So yeah, you might want to do that as well. If you don't, the board will just have a little bit of a spacing and it won't look as clean when it's finished. And the next thing is we'll just wire it in. So it's quite a very simple, quite simple and easy to make, but you can make it, obviously you can make it a bit more complex if you want to go a bit more advanced and add the SD card or the GPS. Obviously it probably won't fit in this form factor unless you keep the header pins higher, or if you have a row of female headers here and on this side, then you can have the board that will sit higher, and you can have those other modules or SD card below it and potentially GPS below it as well, depending which modules you buy. In the first one I've made, I'm trying to zoom out, sorry. In the first one I've made, I've actually included an extra row of female headers, and I've wired it all up internally, so I can add a GPS or SD card as an external module as opposed to making it in here. So I just wanted to make it as slim as possible. So an example of that is I've got the header pins and I've got a GPS module, or it could be an SD card slot, and I can plug it in like that. So the only issue is the GPS module I had here doesn't work. So I had to make it so I can make or attach a GPS module or SD card after, or you can just solder it to the pins, but it doesn't look as nice. So the way I've done it, I've just tried to make it as neat as possible, and I can, if I want to expand, I can expand it after. So yeah, this is just the very basic how to connect it up to just the development board. So the first one we'll need to wire is the power, or the 5 volt. So we're running off the 5 volt because you can run off 3.3 volts as well on the development board, but the only issue is if you do it that way, the Wi-Fi board will be on whenever it's connected to the Flipper Zero. So running off the 5 volts, so just stripping and tinning the wire. So yeah, if you run off the 5 volts, the board will only be on when the the 5 volt pin is on. So that will save a lot of battery power when it's in idle and you're not using it. So you don't need a switch or anything, and you don't need to pull the Wi-Fi board off. Just tin the last one. So yeah, you only need 4 wires. I'm just using some 30 AWG silicone wire. And just clean it up. So you only need see it again. You only need a very small piece of wire exposed, just enough to solder it in. So 5 volts is the first pin. So I'll just turn it that way. And I might just give it a little bit more solder. Oh. So that's the first one. The next one we'll do is the ground. And the ground is the last pin on this one. So that's the last pin on the 8 GPIO side. And then we'll turn it around again to make it. And then we need to wire in for the TX and then the RX. So TX is the 5th one in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we'll do the RX, which is number 6. So that's 6 from this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's just, yeah, matching to that on the flipper 0. So you got 5 volt, ground, and then we've gone TX, then RX. And then we're just going to make it correspond to the board. And then so we've got 5 volt and ground. So we'll do the 5 volt and ground first. So just put your board in, just so you know where it needs to go to. So we can see it goes to this one here. So it goes to the 5 volt goes to this one, so it's lining up to number 3. So 5 volts there. So you can run it. Like that. And then just make it go to number 3. So mark or sort of measure where we need to strip it. So go to about there. Use my fingernails just to strip the wire and just twist it. Give it a nice twist. And then we just got to thread it through that hole. Like that. And then we'll do the same thing for the ground. So the ground just goes right next to it. There. Put it through the hole. And just double check what we've done. So when I put it in, they line up to the correct pins. Yep. And then we've just got to do the RX and TX. So on the development board, we've got TX as a second GPIO pin, and then go RX. So it goes 1, 2 for TX, and then 3 for RX. So it lines up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, pin 5, so 5 across. So that one, because that's TX, we want to go RX from the development board. So this one's TX, this one here is RX, so I go RX to TX. So this one's going to 5, I think. So go to about there. Looks okay. Might just pull some of the shielding up a bit. Looks a bit better. And then we can just do the same for the, so it's going from sorry, so it's going from the TX from the flipper to the RX of the development board. So about there. So it'll look like that. And then all we're going to do is insert it. Make sure we pulled out most of the slack and the wires are sitting where we want it to be. And then we can insert the development board on top. So it'll look like that. Once we've done that, we want to test that it works. So I won't show you how to flash the board, but in the description I'll show you the video that I watched to flash this ESP32-C5 with Marauder. Okay. So obviously you want to flash that, get that all sorted, and then once you plug it into your Flipper Zero, go to Marauder, scan, and just make sure it's working. So I can see it's working. So once you've double checked that it works, all we have to do is just solder it in. So push the board all the way down. And you see, because I've made clearance on the other side, it sits flush and the wire doesn't interfere with the board getting sandwiched all the way down. Let's just check this side. This side's sitting a little bit high, so I might adjust. So it sits pretty good. And then we just want to solder those into place. So the ones we want to solder are the 4 connectors first that we've put in. Oh, sorry. Next thing we want to do is we've got to trim it. So we've got it into place where we want it. And I use these holders in to hold where it needs to be. Then I just use some flush slide cutters and I'll cut it flush. And I'll do that on both sides. So just make sure you don't cut into your eyes. So put some fingers or something in, to cover it. And then it'll be flush like that. Both sides. Let's trim this one a little bit more. Just so it sits completely flush. And then we can solder those pins and just make sure it all works. Zoom in. And then just double check that it works first. So once that's soldered in, just do the same thing. We'll put it onto the Flipper Zero. So it's scanning, it's working. And then the last thing we have to do is just solder the rest in. So I might just do solder the rest in. Yeah, I'll take my time and clean it up after I finish the video. So I'll solder it in a bit better. And then just use some alcohol, clean up any of the excess. Let's do one side. Yeah, I'll finish the rest later. But once you finish it all, give it a nice clean with some alcohol. And that's the finished board. So it's quite simple, but once you're finished, you should have a nice clean product. So it looks something similar to this. And you'll have the capability of the additional 5 gigahertz. Just put it on to show. So as you can see, it's not on. But when you go into Marauder or the GPIO 5 volts is turned on, the board will also be on, and I'll get out of it. So yeah, that's the reason we use the 5 volts to power the board. So you can do the exact same thing for the Kiisu, but like I mentioned, it's mirrored. So make sure you put it all on, put the board on top of it, see the way you want to lay it out, and then you can just solder it all into place and it should be good to go. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.